2146 as your SMS line at Metropole TV, KE, across all your social media platforms. Get involved in the conversation this morning. My name is Simba Elijah Charles Kiage. This is your official economic review this morning, where we also tell you what it is that you're waking up to this morning in terms of your biggest economic headlines in the country. Let's talk about that inflation now, which is going to form the first part of our conversation this morning, where increased transport, electricity and food prices in the month of October. So Kenya's inflation jumped to a 5-month high. Now the jump was 4.84%, representing the highest growth since 5.33% in May 2020, which stands at a big contrast from the 4.2% recorded in September, going against the prediction of the Central Bank of Kenya, which gave a lower prediction at the end of September. Now, KBS says in a statement on Friday that the month-to-month food and non-alcoholic drinks index rose by 1.14% in October 2020, while the year-on-year food inflation increased by 5.76%. Now, this was contributed by increase in prices of carrots, mutton and wheat flour, yes, among other food items. Now, the drop in average prices in common household food items such as cabbages, loose maize grains and spinach went down 1.59%, 1.113% and 0.9% respectively over the review period. Now, question this morning is, how do we factor the effects of the coronavirus pandemic on the latest numbers from the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics? Just before we cross over to Peter Amanga this morning, who's already joined us in this conversation, let's look at that inflation rate. And we're studying it all the way from January 2020 up to where we are right now. And that latest figure is going to show you that the biggest that we've seen so far was in February, where we did have it at 7.17. That was the biggest jump so far. And May did see us go back to 5.87%. April was also one of the bigger ones, coming in at 6.01, and then we have it at May was also showed us that it shot up to 5.33%, and the biggest one was also in June at 4.59%. But now this is another big one, which has jumped to 4.84%. Good. Peter Mungai, good morning, sir.
Yes, sir. I'm happy to be here again.
Thank
you for giving me an opportunity to say something.
Happy to talk to you this morning as well. So the question is going to be, well, it is a jump, yes, 4.84%, fine, within a limit, but then it is the biggest one that we've seen in just a couple of months. I mean, since May, that's the biggest one. What does it say? Does it sort of say to what is happening now, the effects of the coronavirus pandemic?
Yes, of course, the coronavirus has affected us, not only us, the entire globe. The economy of Kenya and all other nations in the world is actually on a slow. We can't really run away from the effects of corona. The other thing is that we should continue just blaming corona and COVID-19 for the woes of our economy. Because whenever you discover that you have a problem, the English say, if you discover you're in a hole and you have to stop digging. Now, the problem with us is that we may want to continue blaming corona for what we are going through, how our economy is behaving and the inflation that we are seeing. But we need to also realize that there are other countries in the world that are now trying very hard to come out of this kind of deficit that we are facing. So yes, we are in a deficit. Yes, we are down. Our inflation is very high. Yes, Kenyans are suffering. Yes, our economy has taken a beating. But to me, the question should be, what is the way forward? We can't keep crying, Simba. We can't keep complaining and just saying, our soft drinks. Let's come up with solutions, with properly guided solutions and nuggets to save our economy and to remove us from this hole that coronavirus has been digging us into. That's my take.
Yes, let me take you back to what the CBK did predict. I mean, they're telling us, well,
Yes.
inflation within this COVID-19 period is going to be pretty much within the numbers. But then, Peter Munga, for anybody listening to you this morning and wondering, why
Yes.
are we talking about inflation that is within line, but then I don't feel the weight of that money in my pocket? What is your response going to be? I mean, when you look at these macro indicators, we're talking about the prices of fuel, which have been pretty much down. We're talking about wheat flour. We're talking about tomatoes. We're talking about sukuma
Yes.
wiki, which has also been down as well. Is that a proper
Yes.
indicator for you and I to say, wow, the inflation is still within that number? Is it possible for you to look at the inflation numbers and then say, well, I pretty much agree because I don't feel that weight?
Yes, okay, of course we agree. As a Kenyan who's on the streets, I agree that surely that is how chilling. That is exactly just the tea, the sugar. Six things that we Kenyans go for. It's just sugar, tea leaves, unga. Unga is the biggest commodity. Then, which is we talk about things about, or to some of us about gas. Now, of course, these are the things that CBK has tried to capture. And when you look at them, limit within the timelines, within and with the demarcations, yes, that is the picture that's on the ground. And I cannot that as Kenyans we are even doing much better or worse than that. That is where we are. But something that CBK is not telling Kenyans is, why are we there? Why are we stagnated there? Why are we still in that kind of situation? The reason is not just because of COVID-19. Let's stop blaming COVID-19 always. The country is undergoing a very serious thing called debt. We are in big debt, Simba, and this debt that we are having is what is affecting and causing this inflation that we are seeing. The CBK has to wipe out all kind of currencies and the monies from banks so as to pay and meet these loans. They are mitigating. And so these are the things that they're not telling Kenyans. They'll just say it's COVID and give it a blanket statement. But the truth of the matter is, we have deadlines to pay our debt. They are expecting us to pay. Everybody's on our neck. The Minister for Finance, and I want to be very honest with Kenyans, Minister for Finance this morning is seated somewhere, balance books, and trying to see how it discover you that I've not done this. The moment you've not paid your rent, you've not paid your what, you've not paid your loan, you've not paid your obligations, my friend, everything else loses meaning. In Kenya, the issue is not about even the inflation. The issue is the high debt, the big debt that Kenya, and nobody talks about it openly. But that is where the nitty-gritty, that's where the rubber meets the road. That is where we are today.
Somebody is going to ask you this question now for Peter this morning on what the CBK's prediction to our economic growth chances this year were. And remember, they did surprise us with that big number. IMF is telling us 1%. CBK came and told us, well, we have a chance of going all the way up to 3.5%. But even look at what the inflation has been within this pandemic. I mean, we haven't seen quite a big one. And I'd like to go back to that data again so we can actually see where we've come from in terms of what our inflation numbers have been. You will see, well, that yes, we've been within line. Yes, we're looking at them right now. And if you look at where we are, all the way from March, which was when we reported our first case, which was at 5.84%, to where we are right now at 4.84%, then they will argue a point and say, but if you look at inflation numbers, they have been within line, which pretty much means even economy growth chances are pretty much secure. Do you share the same sentiment?
You cannot tell us that we are secure financially. I don't think that is where we are. We are not. This is the truth, Simba. Yes, the figures show that, we are steady. In fact, one time I had the president give a speech and he said that despite the problems of
yes,
low, in fact, there was a that we have even we have even gained. Now, one thing that we must also agree is that the curfew that we have been having during the COVID-19, especially in the days of March, so much things were not happening. Fuel was not being used. People were staying at home during the lockdown period. You understand? Around that time, people were not really going out. People were not traveling. People were staying indoors. Now, such a thing has also some effects on the economy. Because if we spend money traveling and also we didn't have accidents on the road, one of the things that really takes care of our money and our economy is when people are traveling up and down and accidents everywhere and everybody's either in hospital, things are happening in the court sessions, people are being fined for offenses. Those are some of the things that eat into our economy, okay? But you see, during lockdown, we were indoors, we were at home. Now, some of the things that take away our money and even affect our economy were not being affected because we were indoors, we were tumefungiwa kama kuku. But as we start opening up the economy, which now we have started doing, you will notice that again the inflation will not remain the way it was. Already now we are talking about schools have opened. Schools go with the money. You see, when schools were closed, let me tell you, 40% of our GDP as a country goes into the education system. When schools were closed all this time, money for schools was not going out. It had not even left the treasury. And saving. That is why you saw government talk about things like we even have gained on our economy. We are seeing like we have some progress. We have some little money here and there because so many sectors of the economy were closed. Now, when we start opening those sectors of the economy that include education, that include transport, that include the Nairobi Stock Exchange and other things, then expect that what's going to happen is, again, the economy will start taking the beating that it has been taking. So the beating is coming. Just that we closed ourselves in a small shop, hoping that Corona will go away. Unfortunately, Corona is not going away, and we have decided to open the economy again. The word opening the economy simply means we are now exposed to, again, what we were going through some time back.
All right, let me just bring in Gabriel Mwendo, who is an investment associate at Rise on Africa Capital this morning. Well, Gabriel, good morning. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. And your first question, Gabriel, is going to be, yes, if you look at the inflation numbers, Gabriel, if you might, could you get your camera on what is it called, landscape mode, as I ask you this question this morning? Good, so that we can actually have a good picture for our viewers this morning. All right, now if you look at the inflation numbers that we have been with even during this coronavirus pandemic, you will actually say that somebody is going to argue that they have been within line. And I want to take you back to the numbers that we have this morning. The latest one being 4.84, that is for the month of October. And if you go back all the way to where we did start from, then you'll actually start to see that as from March, when we had our first case of the coronavirus pandemic in the country, up to where we are right now, you pretty much say that our numbers have been within line. That is the CBK of Kenya set standard below 7%. Does that, Gabriel, therefore go to say that our economic growth chances that the CBK is also putting at 3.5% can actually be met this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing people need to remember is that before we even start, growing anything, we first have to recover what we've lost. So,
yes.
For example, the economy is based on 3 sectors, and one sector loses 80% to 90%, as we've seen with the tourism sector, then it means for you to record any growth from the previous year, the other sectors have first compensate for what has been lost in this one sector before you can even say there's any growth. Now, if you look at the sector that has been hit, the key ones, tourism, food and restaurants, it's quite significant. I mean, we're talking about 88% in tourism, quite a significant bit in restaurants, taken a hit. A few export sectors have taken a hit, yet the only growth has been mainly in, food and agriculture, a bit of export in horticulture as well. So it's not going to compensate for the same. And I think we remember that the government was saying there was going to be growth, but when KNBS released the numbers, we ended up with some negative numbers, some negative, like actually a recession. So I think what they should stop obsessing about is chasing this growth.
Yes.
And simply say, we are pursuing recovery. And if you look at the inflation numbers, you see the challenge with inflation numbers, they actually ignore asset prices.
Yes, we seem to have lost again Gabriel on that point as well. It was really talking about understanding this inflation numbers and what they mean in relation to the economy chances of growth, which the CBK has put at 3.5%, which is way beyond what other economists have really put it at, because the IMF puts it 1% this year, or should I say just 1% this year. Let's take a break and then get them back so that we continue with the conversation this morning. And I don't know, yes, let's take that break.